Good morning and a very warm welcome from the Avon Valley churches and our thought for the day. I'm Heather Clark. I'm a Churchwarden and a lay worship leader in the benefice. Today I want to talk a little bit about a book that I came across quite by accident. I was looking for worship poetry by Gerard Kelly, who writes the most wonderful worship poetry. And I came across a book written by him called The Prodigal Evangelical. The title made me think, so I downloaded the book onto my Kindle. Now I've read it, and it is a fascinating, challenging book. He tackles many difficult questions that many of us may have come across, and it's worth reading because of that. Just to give you a very brief synopsis, he starts by explaining that when he was 13, he met a group of youngsters called the Jesus People, and he became very friendly with them, and after a little while he himself decided to follow Jesus. As he got to be an older teenager and early 20s, his faith wavered a bit, and he thought about whether he really wanted to be part of what he calls the Christian tribe. And he was rather ashamed of various things that were associated with Christianity. And he says that rather than dismiss people like Richard Hawkins and others who criticised Christianity, he needed to listen to them. And in listening, he found that some of their criticisms were real and needed to be answered. Some are obvious, where people desperately let down Christ by behaving in an immoral or really unpleasant way. Obviously, we've had high profile cases of sexual or physical abuse, which are totally unacceptable either on any scale. But he also says that, in his opinion, many of our church services are too inhibiting of our real understanding of God. For instance, he takes the creed as an example, and he says the creed, any creed, in any church, is an attempt to encapsulate what we understand about God. And all too often it becomes God. But of course it's not. It's a very short summary, and it's an understanding of God, but God himself is so much bigger than our understanding. And he tells a story of, I think it was a monk's story actually, I think the monk was the guy in the story, who stood on the edge of a beach at night and watched the sea. Well, he could watch the sea coming in. He watched the waves lapping on the seashore. He could hear the waves further out, but beyond that he could neither hear nor see anything. And he said that's like our understanding of God. We can see some of it, we can hear some of it, we can sort of imagine some of it, but God is bigger than our imagination. He's bigger than anything we can think of. And so we shouldn't try to limit him into a short creed. You may or may not agree with that. But what he then goes on to talk about, the second thing I'd like to bring out about it is that he talks a bit about a common misconception about an Old Testament God and a New Testament God. The Old Testament God is vengeful and judgmental, and the New Testament God is loving and forgiving. And he quite rightly says that God is God in both, all through the Bible, and he's the same God. And he then expounds on what we know as the parable of the prodigal son. And he believes that this is Jesus really explaining what God is like in a very clear way. And he was explaining it to, obviously, to his followers, but also to the Pharisees who did believe in a vengeful God. And it's a very, very clear and very well argued exposition, which you'll need to read for yourselves. But I'd just like to bring out his 4 main points. The first is that we need to accept that we are beautiful, that we are made in God's image. We're made for a purpose, formed by creative love. And he says that we have to accept that we have intrinsic value, a worth no activity of mine or anybody else can successfully erase. So, first of all, we have to accept that as the prodigal son was in fact the son of a wealthy landowning farmer, not the son of a pigman. He had this, and he had an inheritance to inherit. So we too are born as children of God, made in his image. But secondly, we have to accept that we are broken, because the good that is intrinsic in us has been corrupted, that greed and selfishness and anger, all the other things, break the image of God in us, and we have to accept that. And of course the prodigal son had to accept that he had totally failed in this new life that he'd gone off to enjoy, and he had to decide to go home to his father. And then thirdly, the son decided to go back to his father, and he had decided what he was going to say to him. He was going to ask for forgiveness and ask to be accepted back as a servant. But when he got back, his father was waiting for him. His father had already forgiven him. And Gerald Kelly says God has forgiven us before we ask for forgiveness. What we have to do is accept that forgiveness, because God has done what is needful. I want to just read a little bit. He says, it's not because our brokenness is dismissed or ignored or magically transformed by therapy. In Christ, my brokenness is taken seriously, taken for all its cruel worth, taken on by someone else. My crimes are fully reckoned with, but not by me. It is at the very centre of the Christian understanding of atonement. It does not magically and mysteriously disappear. Rather, we watch it go. We see it drain away, slipping and sliding down the body of a Maker who has chosen to be like us. So that is the cost of our forgiveness, and one that we need to accept. And then finally, his 4th point is that the prodigal son went back to his father, he accepted the forgiveness, and then he accepted his invitation to come back into the family. and we have to accept God's invitation, knowing that we are made for this is Gerard Kelly's words, knowing that we are made for magnificence, acknowledging in our beauty that we are broken, seeing that God has chosen to resolve this terrible dilemma by enacting unilateral forgiveness. We have one more step: to accept our Maker's invitation to renewed and reinvigorating intimacy. The act of falling into the embrace of my perfect parent. So those are the 4 elements of the parable that he discusses in quite a lot of detail, and those are the 4 conclusions. It is very well worth reading, and it is, as I say, very challenging, and I'd love you to read it as well. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'd like to finish by just using one of Gerard Kelly's. This poem is called The Blessing. May you who are restless find rest, and in rest, restoration and the healing of your hollow soul. May peace be yours. May you who are frozen find freedom, and in freedom the strength to face the fire and the thawing of your ice-gripped heart. May peace be yours. May you who are conflicted find convergence, and in convergence, confidence to be the one new child of your old divided self. May peace be yours. May you who live in tension find tenderness, and in tenderness the tendency to kindness and the miracle of majoring in mercy. May peace be yours. May you who are godless, may you find God, and in God the grace and growth you need for fruit and fruitfulness, and the love which will last you through the long haul of a lived for others life. May peace be yours. Thank you for listening, and do come back again tomorrow for our next thought for the day. Goodbye.